I think one aspect of delegation that people don't think about is setting the culture of your company. And I think if you define the culture of your company in a way that people are crystal clear on what you expect for your business, how you act in your business, how people do things here, if you're really clear on the culture, delegation becomes way easier because then everyone knows how to act, how to make decisions. They know how to run the project that you're going to trust them with.
Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Kristy Yoder, host of the Master Delegator podcast. The Master Delegator podcast is for busy and overwhelmed entrepreneurs who want to learn how to become effective in the area of delegation and learn how to hire great virtual assistants to help them scale their business and have more time and freedom. If you are new to this channel, please consider subscribing and don't forget to click the notification bell so you get notified every time I post a new video. All right, let's get started. Hey, in this episode, I had a chance to talk to Bobby Powers. I was super excited to meet and ask him questions because he is also, like me, very passionate about delegation. And he wrote an article about how to become a master delegator. And that's actually what led me to him. I saw his article on LinkedIn and decided to reach out to him and asked if he wants to be a guest on my podcast. And so now I was able to interview him and we talked about delegation. That's why I was super excited and extra excited when I met him. So Bobby Powers is the director of employee experience at The Block. The Block is a cryptocurrency information services where Bobby leads manager training, onboarding, and employee development. Before joining The Block, Bobby managed international teams as large as 160 people across fintech, software, and retail. Bobby's writing has been published in dozens of publications, and you can find his work on Medium and his blog, bobbypowers.net. Let's welcome Bobby. Hey, Bobby, I'm so excited for you to be on the podcast show because you are a master delegator, and my podcast is all about delegation. And so before we dive in, before you tell us how to become a master delegator, tell us how you became one. How did you learn about delegation?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Christine, and really excited to be on the podcast with you. So I've had a slew of different management roles throughout my career, worked in a bunch of different industries, worked in startups, which is where I'm at right now, small businesses, and then large Fortune 50 companies. And in those opportunities, I've gotten the chance to run teams as small as 2 people and as large as 160 people. And especially as a manager of really big teams, anytime you're leading a team of dozens of people, you realize very quickly that you will fail in your role miserably if you're not able to delegate work. And so just by force of nature of being in that kind of role, you have to get better at that sort of thing. And just in general, I realized that I had to amplify my own abilities by trusting my team more and giving them more, not only projects that I had been doing before, but also giving them more decisions. And that's one of the things I'm really passionate about with delegation, is not just delegating work, but delegating decisions to people. And I think that's really when the amplification aspect comes in.
That's really awesome. I love that. And I totally agree with you that you don't just delegate specific tasks to your team, but you delegate the responsibility. They need to have ownership in whatever in whatever you need them to do. So so you mentioned that, you know, you were kind of forced to learn how to delegate because you are handling a team. So what were the struggles that you had to overcome?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll take one role I had specifically back about 6 years ago. I was the director of a client services team, and that was a 160 person team spread across 2 countries.
Wow.
And we worked with a bunch of different Fortune 500 clients that trusted us for investment accounting. was an investment accounting company. And so when I moved into that role of director of that department, I realized that I was in almost 40 hours of meetings every week. And that burden of all of the meetings meant that all the different kind of work that I had done before, all the stuff I had been used to cranking out, I couldn't crank out anymore. I had to trust people or work 80 or 90 hours a week trying to get all this stuff shoved into a schedule. So it just really forced me to reevaluate the way I was looking at my team and reevaluate the types of things that I thought I could do versus other people could do. Is that I had to stretch a little bit more. I had to trust people with things that maybe they had never done before, but I was going to give them as an opportunity for them to learn and grow, part out of necessity, but also just part out of employee development. Is that I think that's one of the biggest aspects of delegation is at the end of the day, you're developing your people. You're giving them chances to do things that maybe is a run-of-the-mill activity for you, but it's a brand new thing for them. And I think that is an awesome way to use delegation, is things that you know how to do already, but things that someone else doesn't know how to do. So I started to take those things and give those to more people on my team.
I love that, and I totally agree. I love John Maxwell. I don't know if you know him, but he's pretty popular.
Yeah.
He's all about servant leadership, and he said that, you know, a sign of a true leader is when you are able to pass on what you know to other people. Don't just be a leader where you're leading people because you have a title, because you're the boss, you're the manager, but lead
Right.
people because you influence them, because you actually can teach them how to do something or pass on what you already know to those people. So I totally agree with that. Um, did you have a hard time trusting your team, and why?
Delegation comes really, really hard for a lot of managers. And I in my role now, I get to coach other managers on how to delegate. So we've been training our management team on how to do this. So I know it's really difficult for a lot of people. It wasn't quite as difficult for me. There are plenty of things I've struggled with as a manager in the past, but that wasn't one of the big ones. One of the reasons why is that I knew people trusted me with projects of delegating work to me back when I was an individual contributor and back when I was really junior in my career. And if they trusted me and I didn't know what the heck I was doing, I could trust other people even if they hadn't done it before. So I just really tried to anchor into that knowledge of the only way for someone to learn and grow is to tackle things outside their comfort zone. And so that awareness, that knowledge, and reminding myself of that helped me out quite a bit. But I would say overall, from all the managers I've worked with and trained and just worked alongside through the years, delegation is one of the toughest skills for most people.
Oh yeah, exactly. And that's why I have this podcast show.
Yeah,
because
yeah, for sure.
because if it wasn't, a difficult topic to discuss, then I wouldn't be here, right?
Yeah,
Um
exactly.
I totally agree with what you said, and I personally believe as well that having a relationship with each of your team members makes it easy for you to delegate a task to them, because you're then gonna know what they like doing, what they don't like doing, their strengths and weaknesses. And
Yeah,
I think at first you just really have to put your fate on them, because you wouldn't hire them, they wouldn't be under your team if they're not able to do, their responsibilities. I mean, of course, we're
yeah,
human
yeah,
beings, we fail, we make mistakes, but again and again, like I always tell my clients and even my entrepreneur friends, that you have to give feedback. Don't just, ask them to do something, and then when they make a mistake, you're like, oh, you did it wrong, I'll just give it to somebody else. Give feedback so that person will learn, what to do the next time you delegate a task to them.
for
And
sure. And
so go ahead.
oh yeah, just one note based off that too. Like what you were sharing sparked something in me. So I think of delegation the same way I think of promoting managers into their first management role. So for any of you entrepreneurs out there that you have a manager role you have to fill, and you maybe have a person that really wants to become a manager for the first time, that's the same kind of trust we're talking about here, right? It's trusting someone to delegate. It's just like trusting someone to move into a position for the first time.
Hmm.
And the pushback I always hear from early founders or execs or high up managers is, well, I've never seen that person do that thing before. They've never managed a team, or they've never run a project like that. And I kind of think, of course they haven't. They've never been given the chance to do that. But just the fact they haven't done it before doesn't mean that they wouldn't be able to and that they wouldn't flourish in that kind of position.
Yeah, and it's also a way to develop them as a person, you know.
Yeah.
So let's talk about team member development. Why do you think that is so crucial? You know, you've handled different, you know, people, teams, and you've also spoke to different managers, business owners. Why do you think it is crucial to develop someone?
Yeah, for sure. This is a big thing for me, especially. I work as the director of employee experience at my company. And so, employee experience, learning and development, all of that is right in the sweet spot for me. And I think those things are so important because at the end of the day, we want jobs to be more than just a salary, more than a paycheck for an employee. And I think one of the best ways to make it more than a paycheck is to give that employee things beyond the money in their account, the insurance that you give them, and the basic benefits and perks. And one of the best things that everyone is craving for more of in their careers is more growth, more development, more opportunities to take on more responsibility, more projects that they've never handled before. And so I think that's why delegation is so key, is that employee development keeps people around, keeps people engaged, keeps people excited about their jobs. And at the end of the day, they end up raving their peers at other companies about the opportunities you've afforded them. And then that brings more great people in the door. So it's really this positive, virtuous cycle.
I love that. And so, how do you know what to delegate and what to keep?
Yeah, actually, we've just been going through a training series with our managers about this very topic and about delegation in general. And one of the models that I've used a lot that I really heavily recommend is a decision tree model of delegation from an author, Susan Scott. So Susan Scott wrote a book called Fierce Conversations that I read years ago. And she shares an example in that book of thinking of your work as a tree. And there are some decisions that are at the root level of that tree, that it's so core to the tree's health and growth that those are things that you as a leader, you're not going to delegate those things probably. They're root level decisions that you want to make yourself. And that's core to the business and your strategy. But then there are other things that are trunk decisions or branch decisions or leaf decisions. And those things, especially out at the leaf level, are things that you really should not only be delegating, but telling your people, you can act on these things and not even tell me how you decided. You just do this on your own. So in her decision tree model, it's basically this model of looking at everything in a person's role, like in your scope of experience or my scope of my role, and trying to figure out what are the things that are so core that it's a root thing for me. So in my job, that's like employee culture and development. Like those are so core that I'm going to be involved in setting objectives and key results for our company. I'm going to be involved in coming up with the plan for how we develop new employees in role through our onboarding process. So those are root decisions for me. But things that are out at the leaf level that I would delegate is like more of the minor nuances that are either less strategic or they're things that I know other people can do. And even if they fail, it's really okay. We're going to learn from that and grow.
Yeah, I love that analogy. And I think some of the tasks that are part of the leaf level, you know, in the analogy that you just gave, I think admin tasks, those repetitive tasks, those are the things that you can delegate to your team members without even giving them a heavy responsibility, right? Especially when you feel like there is somebody in your team that has potential, you can delegate something simple to them first and see if they can do it. And if they can do a simple task, then, you know, delegate another task that is maybe a little bit, important or extensive or complex than the previous task that you delegated.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Oh, for sure. And I think it's always just about the idea of not only employee trust, which we've talked about, but giving people that are tasks that are just a little bit beyond their current level of experience, a little bit beyond their abilities. And those stretch tasks It could be things that you or I have maybe done 100 times, but someone early career has not done, and it's a stretch task for them. That's where the real growth happens, is those types of things.
Are you sick and tired of being overwhelmed and afraid you'll never scale your business? Meet Smart VAs. Unlike many virtual assistant agencies that only assign one dedicated virtual assistant, we provide flexibility for growing businesses by assigning a team of experienced virtual assistants that can do different tasks to support your continuous growth. Visit smartvas.online to book a free discovery call and start growing your business.
That's so true. So what kind of tools you need to provide, or how do you equip your team member to do the task that you want to delegate?
Yeah, for sure. So you alluded to the idea earlier of knowing your team's strengths and weaknesses, knowing the things that they want to, grow and develop in their career doing. I think that's a big piece of this puzzle, is knowing where there's a match for a project or some kind of task and where someone wants to go in their career. But beyond that, as I'm delegating work to someone, I try to be really clear on a few things. One is I always explain the context, is I have a wealth of context in my head about that thing. And my job when delegating work is to explain the what and the why, and to delegate the how. I want them to have full ownership over how that task gets done. And if I'm telling them how to do it, that's not real delegation. That's not something that's going to help someone learn and grow. But I want to explain the what and the why, delegate the how. I also want to show them a few of the different potential landmines they might run into. So oftentimes, if it's something I've worked on before, I have context on, I know there are 3 or 4 risk factors or people that are going to be tough stakeholders to convince on this project. And it's my job as the person delegating that work to explain what those risk factors are. And then another thing is to make myself available to help. Is that I think too often people look at delegation as a way to completely remove things from your plate. And if you're completely removing it and giving it to someone else and never checking in, never helping them, to me, that's an abdication of responsibility. That's not true delegation. True delegation is giving someone the task, letting them own the how, but then also coming up with ways to follow up and make sure that that task actually got done, that they don't have questions, that they don't need support. And so oftentimes as I'm delegating work, I'm saying, hey, when do you want to check in again? Let's come up with 1 or 2 key milestones. And I want you to own those milestones. Let me know when you're going to follow up with me again. And do you want to do a meeting together? You want to send me an email update? What does that look like? But I'm letting them own as much of that as possible.
I love that so much. You have to explain the what, the why, and you delegate the how. And that is so true, especially for people who are very proactive with dominant style of, personality.
Yeah.
They will ask you a question like, why are you delegating this to me? Like, for what? So you have to always explain explain the reason behind each task. Like, instead of
Yeah.
saying, hey Christy, I want you to reply to this person, manage my calendar, my inbox, just because I don't have time for it right now. Just do it for me, please. I think it, uh, uh, you know sadly a lot of people do that, but
Yeah.
you have to explain. When you delegate, you have to explain why you're delegating it to your team member, instead of saying, I don't have time to handle my inbox, my calendar. Say, hey, you know what, I'm delegating this to you because, to be honest, I don't really have time, and I know that you are the best person to do this task because you are very organized, you are very detailed, and you reply immediately to people. So I feel like you're the best person for this
Yeah.
job. Can you help me with this? You know, you have to really explain it thoroughly and explain why you're choosing them to do the task, instead of just telling them, I don't have time, I just want this done, I just want this to be removed off my plate.
Yeah, and even that extra little bit of detail that you just shared of this is why I'm giving this to you, this is why I trust you to do this thing, that means the world to people. And that's a way of giving them kudos and recognition for things that they're really good at and putting it into context for them that this is an important task. This is the kind of thing that even if it's just like managing the calendar, here are the ripple effects of if we get calendar invites wrong.
Oh
It has
yeah.
profound but like ability to mess up not only your work and your schedule, but clients and vendors and other people that you'd be working with. So I think explaining that concept and that context is really key. And it's also the kind of thing that it adds more meaning to the person's work, is being told, I want you to do this task and not giving any more information about it. Giving that kind of thing in isolation doesn't feel good, but explaining the context, explaining the worth behind it, it helps that person know this is connected to a deeper purpose and meaning. And I think that makes them that much more likely to want to do it.
Exactly. I totally agree. So when you delegate a task, and you kind of touch on this a little bit earlier, how do you monitor the tasks that you want to delegate or that you've delegated? Like, do you check on them like every day?
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on what the project is. So it depends on urgency and importance of the project. But in general, based on whatever the urgency and importance is, I think there are 100 different ways that you can do this. You can ask that person to set up a meeting with you every week. If you're someone that prefers to have that kind of verbal check in, you can ask them to send you an email update every day, every week, whatever that timeline is. Or one of my favorite things is if I'm delegating something over email, what I have started to do a lot is I BCC myself on the email. And when that comes into my inbox, I hit the little clock icon in Outlook or in Gmail, and I snooze that task until the day that I want to follow up with them. So then what that looks like is I get this BCC'd email in, it's me asking someone to do XYZ things by whatever date. And so then I hit the snooze, I set it to that date that I want to follow up. And then when that date comes, if I haven't heard an update, I respond back in the email and I say, hey, this is the date we had agreed to. I haven't heard anything back. How is it going? So I think there are a million little tactics like that that you can use. It's just a matter of finding the ones that work for you and your workflow and the ones that are pertinent to that specific project and whatever the urgency of that project is.
Wow, I love that. And so, like for instance, if you delegated a task to somebody and that person did not do the task or did not finish the task according to your standards, so what are you gonna do then?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of feedback. And I know you mentioned that before
Yeah.
too, that that's something you're a big fan of. So I think feedback is one of the best gifts that we can give an employee. And it's one of the best gifts that we can receive ourselves is to get feedback from someone. So in those situations, I would just schedule some time with that person to chat, even just for a few minutes. And I would share a little bit about what I expected that project to be, or what the timeline was supposed to be, and how I didn't think that it lived up to that. And I specifically use the SBI model of feedback, of sharing the situation, the behavior, and then the impact of whatever they did or didn't do. So I try to put it in that format for them of this is what happened, this is what I was expecting, but you didn't do that. And so here's the impact that it had on me, on our clients, on our company, etc.
I love that. So, did you say the first letter S? Is it sharing? Is that what it is? Sharing, behavior, and
SBI,
impact.
so it's
Okay.
situation, behavior,
Oh,
impact.
situation. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
I love that. I mean, a lot of people they do a sandwich approach when they give feedback to their employees, and I mean that works for other people. But sometimes, I mean, they don't other team members, they don't want flowery words, just give it to me
yeah,
straight, I can take it. And I'm actually that type of person, like you don't have to sandwich approach me, just tell me
yeah,
what I did wrong, tell me what I can do to improve, especially when you're like when you don't really have anything nice to say because you don't know the person. It's like you're forced to come up with something positive when it's not really necessary, if that makes sense. So I like this approach, situation, behavior, and impact. It's really important to give feedback to your team members or virtual assistants or employees because without
yeah.
feedback, nobody will ever grow.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And personally, I hate the sandwich approach. So I'm glad you and I are in the same camp. I've tried it in the past earlier in my career and it miserably failed. People did not get the message they were supposed to.
Yeah, that's true. And I've learned that, when it comes to giving feedback, or even, you know, resolving a conflict, talking to somebody, you know, about what they did wrong, you don't say sorry and you don't apologize for giving them feedback, because when the moment you say sorry, you're like taking away everything that you said to that person.
Right.
And that happened to me so many times. Like, I always, I value, positivity and just loving other people, but sometimes you have to show I don't know, candor, condor, whatever. I
Yeah.
don't know how exactly you pronounce it. I'm from the
Candor.
Philippines,
Yeah.
so yeah, candor, yeah, candor. You have to show candor, and give them, and make them realize that they need discipline. They need to improve on something. So yeah, that happened to me so many times. I give feedback to somebody, and I was very stern. And after our conversation, after I got off the phone with that person, I was like, should I say sorry with how I said something? I feel like my tone was a little bit, different than how I am usually. And I was like, no, don't say sorry. And I learned that from John Maxwell as well. I'm a big fan of John Maxwell.
I
As a
love
matter
John
of fact,
Maxwell. Actually,
yeah.
you can see a bunch of I have bookshelves of business books here, and there's like 10 John Maxwell books over
Oh,
there. So yeah, I
wow.
love John Maxwell.
I love John Maxwell. It's like reading just a page on his book. I'm like, I I think I need to take a day to process this one page of information that I got out from his book.
Yeah.
I'm actually gonna go to his conference in October, so I'm so excited.
Oh, nice. That's great.
Yeah, and I usually listen to his podcast shows as well. So, well, this has been great. Oh my gosh, I feel like we can talk about delegation all the time. You have shared so much value, Bobby. Some stuff that I didn't know about. Although I consider myself a master delegator, so thanks for sharing about Suzanne Scott, about the decision tree model and the SBI feedback approach. So those are very, very helpful. Anything else that you want to share? Wisdom on how to delegate, or how to become a master delegator?
Yeah, one final thought is that I think one aspect of delegation that people don't think about is setting the culture of your company. And I think if we define the culture of your company in a way that people are crystal clear on what you expect for your business, how you act in your business, how people do things here, if you're really clear on the culture, delegation becomes way easier, because then everyone knows how to act, how to make decisions. They know how to run the project that you're going to trust them with. And that's one of the biggest fears people have with delegation in general, is that it won't be done to the standard that I expect, or it won't be done in a similar way to what I would hope. And a lot of that fear goes away if you've been really clear about what you do expect as a business, who your
Yeah.
culture is, what your culture is, what your key behaviors, your core values are. I think if you're crystal clear on that, delegation becomes way easier.
Exactly. And I love that you mentioned about setting, your core values, and just letting your team members know how we should act, or respond to one another. That is really key to success when it comes to developing your team members, and growing your business as well. And I feel like we can talk about that in a different podcast episode. So maybe I should have you back to talk about setting the culture in your organization. I love that. I love developing, or making sure that we are really showing who we said we are,
Yeah.
as an organization. So my company's core values right now is in the acronym of love. So LOVA. So we highly value respecting other people and just showing them love, but at the same time knowing how to rebuke somebody in love as well,
Yeah.
without offending them, or without ruining who they are as a person. So I love that you mentioned about culture and core values, because that's also one of the things I'm passionate about, because without those things, your company will never ever be successful.
100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So, where can people find you online, Bobby, if they have any questions on delegation, or if they want to learn more about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. I love nerding out about this stuff. So you can find my writing online at bobbypowers.net. I also write on Medium and wrote an article on Medium called How to Be a Master Delegator, which is, I think, how Kristy and I first got to
Yep.
know each other. So, yeah, you'll look me up on bobbypowers.net or on Medium, and I'd love to connect with anyone out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for today, Bobby.
Yeah, thank you, Kristy.